Art School 012, Art School 12, working with form. Now, in the real world, in proportion to our size as human beings, we are confronted with form. The first impression one has concerning form is massiveness, as in the sea, mountains, hills, clouds, plains, cities. But this massiveness can even be sensed when looking at crystals of palladium under the electron microscope. It is therefore necessary in these exercises to be able to successfully convey with shading and highlight and by other means a sense of massiveness. Some artists that come to mind are Motherwell, Moore, and so on, perhaps like Leger too, because I didn't put that one in there. We live in an existence where the eye also conveys to our minds not only the picture of detail, but also of volume. Here is the, I'm looking for a synonym for the word challenge, you know. It's such a worn out term, and it's often quite stilted and a bit arrogant. Perhaps I can invent something like trying to make a living to buy food, such as chow lunch, you know, but don't step in the stew, as in not being stupid. Maybe elsewhere, some other time perhaps, the humor pages, you know. Anyway, here is the earnest of significant artwork, in that there is a balance of sorts between detail and form. One cannot do a drawing and make something of it by the inclusion of detail alone to the exclusion of all else. Is there more than the two? Perhaps. You know something, there might be hundreds more criterion one could discover to place in the work, you know. In digital art, I'm looking at the inclusion of surface features that, though quite separate than the subject, add profundity to the portrayal of the work. But here it is imperative to master form itself, oft-times armed with no more than a pencil or perhaps a stick of charcoal. In mastering these things, you can come to a sense of relief in that the tedium and the chore of the work of art is subdued, if not shoved aside, and then you, the artists, can proceed with exuberance and actually enjoy what you're doing, making the work itself an accomplished and significant piece of art. And that's what we're all about, isn't it? You know? It's what Van Gogh, the elder, you know, well, actually his uncle. It's what Van Gogh's elder relative, I think it was an uncle anyway, tried to get him to do. Hey, I saw the movie, Lust for Life, with Kirk Douglas as Vincent. How do I know? I saw the movie, you know. All right. So it's a visually oriented existence, you know. All the more reason to paint. Mauve gave, see, I got a pickup. Can you hear that? That's the loon calling me on the smell of, oh, nope. Junk call. So we got the loon as a background, see. It's beautiful. I got that on And the ringtone's a natural ringtones thing a few years ago. Okay. So Mauve was the name of Vincent's uncle there, I think. Mauve gave Vincent casts, like these are replications of statues or parts thereof in plaster, and told him to do paintings of them, to paint them, Vincent hated that, and after a while he went out and painted au plein air, outside, while he was still working with forms, outside, but he was still working with forms, it's just different things, okay? It's as one of my art teachers told me at the conservative Ruskin School of Drawing and Fine Art, in the cast gallery out behind the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford University. Priests do penance, artists paint statues, same difference. May I quote you? I asked. No, she said. We'll leave it in its complexity. You can paint outdoors in the summer. Yep. Anyway, you see, I intensely disliked the cast gallery. It was religious art, Every statue was some sort of ancient Greek's idea of gods and goddesses. It was, for them, a chow lunch, much livelihood in the productions of religious paraphernalia, Now what Van Gogh, or what we call it Van Gogh, what Van Gogh did for us was to graduate us from the kindergarten of the bootlickers and the bootlickers of idol groupies, and into the joy of the real existence, free from all the tripe of traditionalistic dead ending. There's a livelihood in sucking up, but it's a dead-end street from which there is virtually no return. I was fascinated by the reality in the casts of the antiquitous statues, and by not the reality, but a reality. There was a certain reality that fascinated me, and that was the evidence of the depiction of time itself in the reproduction of the deterioration and damage virtually every piece in that place sported in one way or another. A missing arm or a nose hacked off by invading soldiers in the belief that they were disarming the premises of its supernatural power. Also time itself and the weathering of outside pieces showed their effects. But of necessity, to work with volume and, is something that has to be done. So it is necessary to work with volume, and the point of the teacher is well taken. You've got to work with something more than a fussy, fidgety, squirming live model. You can make casts by enclosing arms or feet or so on a volunteer in sort of bandages, making a mold, pouring for a pouring of plaster. I don't know how to do that. So you'll have to find out, perhaps from the internet somewhere, because plaster can be very damaging to the skin or something, so watch it, Otherwise, perhaps somewhere in your neighborhood there are statues, albeit not the nude one. You really need, like those money-grubbing ancient Greeks made. Oh, they were good, but so what? They got, they were in a rut. If they got out of their rut, they would have been great. They were good, but they could have been great, you know? But if you find statues, do some paintings and drawings of them at least once a week for a year or something like that. We have to master the sense of depicting form in the work. Getting involved in the descriptive and the sketchy is a common temptation with the amateur and the novice, thinking to him or herself, this is what I must do to produce art, unquote. Here's the use of shading in design exercise, you know. Oh, I read it wrong. Sorry, guys. I'm having a hard time today. Hey, maybe I need to turn on a light. I mean, the screen is backlit, but... Oh, that's better. Aces high. No, wrong kind of better. What? Where's the dice? Yeah, it's another day for you and pair of dice. Okay, look twice. I've been looking twice at most of these sentences. Okay. You know. So here's where the use of shading in design exercise comes in handy. As one teacher told me, what we are after is the change of planes. No, not at the airport, you know, it's like transferring plane. No, the change of planes, you know, in this G-box. Planes changing, see? Rapid change of planes. What we're looking at is the change of planes, not detail. Too brief a sketch of the surface features doesn't mean anything until you make them mean something. Yeah, or if I read it the same way but a little different accent, until you make them mean something. Okay. I tried to take notes of what he was telling me, to which he added, without even glancing over his shoulder, quote, "That's ridiculous," close quote. He didn't realize I was working on the depiction of time itself, you know, but that's another exercise. Actually, you know, that's where that's a new type of art form. And according to some one of the artists I've been talking with, I'm in a neighborhood where other people have done that too. They've hit on it. So maybe that's our period of art history, where we're dealing with time. In my case, I do depiction of the future, you know, and it's not on purpose. That's the best part. You don't know until it's like, I won't get into that now. We're dealing with this, so, okay. But he didn't realize that that's what I was doing. When I drew those statues, and you'll see from some of the work that's survived that I have from the Cass Gallery. I think it was called the Tate Gallery behind the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford University in Oxford, England. What I was doing was the depiction of time. Time. See, so we're drawing time. A portrayal of time, bringing time to the picture plane. Length, width, height, and time. And by the way, I'm just thinking about that now. I have a picture of it right when it hit me. I was looking at a cliff in Skagway, on the edge of Skagway by the Skagway River, Chilcooway River, up in Alaska. And I had actually done a painting of the Winged Victory, the broken Winged Victory with no arms and stuff like that, in the Cass Gallery, the Tate Gallery, about 20 or 30 years later. I'll do the math later, but I said, I had an OMG moment. Yep. I had actually done a premonition of Chilcooway, my being in Skagway, by doing a painting of that Winged Victory that, is a type of statue that they put on a prow of a ship in those days, way back in the days of ancient Greece. So I was doing time. I didn't make any bucks at it, but man, as you can see, I didn't need those damn bucks. Not really. What I needed was the discovery. Okay, let's get back to this now. So, yeah, we got a whole new movement going on there. Futurism, as in depiction of the future. Being able to depict it. I even did it with a depiction of a mutated palm tree in St. Thomas in a piece of digital art. Actually, I have that art online. I think I'll bring that out if I can. Dang, this is really exciting, man. Okay, so see, that's what I mean. You start getting excited. You've got something real here. It's not a dry ecclesiastic exercise, where you have to conform to a bunch of rules, and people get off on being show-offs, That's their real kick. They love to show off. Oh, I happen to do right. He's a great master. Oh, yeah, crap. It's okay, give him his 2-car garage, and, just get him out of here. Okay, so, anyway, he wouldn't let me take notes. That's as far as I got, He told me the guy was brilliant. I'm trying to take notes. He didn't, I guess he had an overdose of too much, false humility. What we are after, he said, is the change of planes, not detail. Too brief a sketch of the surface features doesn't mean anything until you make them mean something. So, yeah, but he didn't realize that I was working on the depiction of time itself, And actually, I succeeded in the drawing of the Winged Victory. There was the cliff in Skagway 30 years later. But you see, we are also concerned with form. The logical mind gets wrapped up in the depiction of detail and surface features. But those who depict the awe of the massiveness of what people perceive visually in reality are able to impart the sense of professionalism that when the viewer of the artwork looks at the piece, he or she knows they are being confronted with something significant. I mean, they've got to be moved. They've got to be moved, That's when you're a professional and not just some amateur dabbling around. Massive or exquisite, or both, the form is there. It's worth exercising to ferret out the skills to depict that on the picture plane or even in sculpture. Where you go from there will be vastly more intriguing and fascinating if you can first get there. Beware, you'll be there.